They say family always comes through when it matters, but that's not always true. I'm Evelyn Cartwright, born in 1947 in Newcastle, Australia. Back in 2022, at 75 years old, I was invited by my only son, Mitchell, to spend the holidays with him, his wife Amelia, and their kids. I felt nervous, but excited, ready to see my grandchildren again. But then something happened. Today, at 78, sitting in my little flat by the beach, I'm finally sharing this because I need to release what's been sitting on my heart for years. If you're listening, drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonates with you. Mitchell had called a month earlier. "Mom," he said cheerfully, "the kids miss you. They keep asking when Nana Eve's coming to visit. We'll be at the gate to greet you with balloons, I promise." I remember smiling, my heart swelling like a girl heading home from boarding school. I packed 3 weeks' worth of clothes, baked slices of lamington for the kids, and even bought a little box puzzle for Ellie, my youngest granddaughter, who loved anything with castles and dragons. The day I flew to Melbourne felt like a dream. I had my favorite cardigan on, the one Jim, my late husband, bought me for our 30th anniversary. I imagined Mitchell holding up a handmade sign with "Welcome Nana Eve" written in glitter. I pictured Ellie running into my arms like she used to before she got too big for my lap. But when I landed and came through the arrival gates, there was no sign. No balloons. No Mitchell. No Amelia. No children. I waited. 5 minutes. 15. 45. A whole hour passed, and I just stood there, clutching the handle of my small blue suitcase, trying to convince myself maybe they were stuck in traffic. I tried calling Mitchell straight to voicemail. I messaged Amelia, no response. I stood alone, watching other people reunite with their families, laughter and hugs all around me, until the terminal started to empty. Eventually, an elderly man sweeping the floor came over and gently asked, "Need help finding your ride, love?" His voice was kind. My throat tightened as I shook my head and said, "No, I think I've been forgotten." I took a taxi to Mitchell's address, the one he'd texted me weeks ago. The driver tried to make conversation, but I could only nod, watching the sun disappear over the skyline as we drove into the suburbs. When we pulled up in front of their house, my chest tightened again. The lights were off, the blinds were down. No car in the driveway. I rang the doorbell anyway. Nothing. Knocked. Still nothing. I sat on the front steps for nearly an hour, thinking maybe they'd gone out to get dinner. But no one came. Just silence, cool wind, and the mocking sound of a wind chime. A neighbor peeked out from across the street and said, "Are you looking for the Taylors? They left yesterday, said they were going to the coast for a week or so." I thanked her, but inside, I broke. I found a nearby motel and checked in. I sat on the bed staring at the floral curtains for the longest time, unsure whether I should cry or scream. I ended up doing neither. Instead, I opened my journal, the one I used to write little poems and grocery lists in, and wrote 5 words. He didn't want me there. I stayed in Melbourne for 2 days, not because I hoped they'd show up, but because I needed to process what just happened. I thought about Jim and how gentle he had always been, how Mitchell used to idolize him, how he used to run to me with scraped knees and science fair trophies. I remembered how, after Jim died, I used my pension and savings to help Mitchell and Amelia with their first home deposit. I remembered babysitting for weeks when Amelia had postpartum depression. I remembered being there for every need, but now I was just a burden, an afterthought. No, something shifted in me that day. When I returned home to Newcastle, I didn't call Mitchell. I didn't text. I didn't answer his calls when they eventually came 3 days too late. Instead, I made a quiet appointment with my solicitor. I revoked the power of attorney Mitchell held over my finances. I adjusted my will. I removed him and Amelia as my primary beneficiaries and set up a trust fund exclusively for Ellie. The lawyer looked at me and asked, "Are you sure, Mrs. Cartwright?" And I said, "Absolutely." Ellie still sees me. They do not. In the weeks that followed, I took walks again. I visited the little community center down the street, the one I hadn't stepped into since Jim passed. I signed up for writing classes, and on a whim, water aerobics too. It was terrifying at first being around people again, but also healing. I started journaling with more intention, pouring out my anger, sadness, and longings like inked confessions onto paper. A few months later, I got a letter in the post. It was in colored pencil. Inside it read, "Dear Nana Eve, why didn't you come for Christmas? I made you a picture of a unicorn. I told Daddy I miss you. Can you come to Grandparents' Day at my school? Please say yes. Love, Ellie." I stared at that note for what felt like hours. And then I cried, not from pain, but from something softer, hope. I said yes. Without hesitation, I wrote back to Ellie, slipping stickers and a handmade bookmark into the envelope. I told her I would absolutely be there for Grandparents' Day. And I meant it. Not for Mitchell, not for Amelia, but for that little girl who still saw me, who still loved me without agenda. 2 weeks later, I boarded a train bound for Melbourne. Again, this time, I didn't tell anyone but Ellie. I had arranged with her school to meet directly at the front office, and a sweet receptionist named Claire greeted me kindly and offered me tea while the event started. I sat beside other grandparents, some chatting, some quiet like me, and when Ellie walked in with her class and spotted me, her whole face lit up. "Nana Eve," she shouted, louder than the teacher probably appreciated. She ran straight to me, arms outstretched, and hugged me so tightly that I nearly lost my breath. I knelt down and whispered, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. She pulled out her school project, a drawing of her family. Right there in the middle was me, holding her hand, wearing a purple dress. Underneath she wrote, "My Nana always makes me feel safe." Something deep inside me healed in that moment. After the event, while parents and grandparents mingled, I noticed Mitchell and Amelia standing awkwardly at the back. He looked thinner than I remembered, but still held that guarded, distracted air. Amelia barely glanced my way. Mitchell approached slowly, his hands in his pockets like a schoolboy caught misbehaving. "Mom," he started. "I didn't know you were coming. I wasn't planning to," I replied evenly. "But Ellie invited me, and when someone truly wants you somewhere, you show up." He looked at me, then down at the floor. "About Christmas, we had a last-minute getaway booked. I thought I told you." "No, Mitchell," I said, not unkindly but firmly. "You didn't forget. You avoided." "That's different." Amelia muttered something under her breath and walked off to the car. Typical, always retreating when truth wasn't convenient. Mitchell cleared his throat, trying again. "Look, Mum, things have just been hectic." I smiled, just slightly. "Life is hectic, Mitch. Love should never be." And with that, I gave Ellie one more hug, promising to send her a story I'd written about a brave little girl and her magical horse. I left without asking for an invitation, without looking back. Back in Newcastle, something inside me blossomed. Not out of bitterness but out of clarity. I realized I had spent too long hoping to be wanted, begging for scraps of attention. But I had value, whether Mitchell saw it or not. I began writing again, not just in my journal, but properly. Short stories, memories, letters to Jim. I joined a book club and even tried out open mic storytelling at the community center one Friday night. It felt awkward at first, standing under fluorescent lights reading about heartache, but the applause after, it was real. I reconnected with Marlene, an old friend I hadn't seen in years. She'd lost her husband too and understood my quiet kind of grief. We began meeting weekly for tea, knitting, and gossip that made us both feel 20 again. On a sunny afternoon, I met with my lawyer to finalize the trust. I wanted Ellie to have something meaningful in account for her future studies, with a note attached she'd only receive when she turned 18. In it, I wrote, "To my darling Ellie, who reminded me that love isn't loud, it's loyal. Use this to chase your dreams and never settle for less than you deserve." Mitchell tried to reach out again around Easter. He left voicemails, apologies, coded in half-truths. I listened, then deleted them. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. I told him in a final message, "Mitchell, I love you. I always have. But I won't chase love that refuses to stand still long enough to hold me back. My door is open to Ellie. If she ever needs me, I'll be here. But I'm no longer willing to play pretend for the sake of appearances. That was that. Months later, Ellie sent me a school photo with a note. Nana, guess what? I'm writing stories like you now. I pinned it beside my typewriter, smiling as I reread it for the 10th time. Sometimes, the family you build isn't always the one you birthed. Sometimes the love you deserve comes from the tiniest hearts, the ones still soft enough to feel. I've built a quiet, joyful life now. One with purpose, with presence, and with peace. I dance every Tuesday night at the seniors' disco, even if my knees groan. I read stories at the local library on Saturdays, and I never wait at gates anymore, not for apologies, not for people who've long walked away. If you're listening to this, and you've ever felt unwanted or invisible, know this: you are not disposable. You are not too much. You are not forgotten. You are still here. So alive. Moral lesson: sometimes the deepest betrayals come from within the home, but peace comes when we stop chasing what won't love us back. Never underestimate the quiet strength of starting again. At any age, remember to like, subscribe, share with someone who needs to hear this, and drop your thoughts in the comments below.